The dirty little secret of digital capture is that every camera or scanner will soften the original image to some degree. Fortunately, Camera Raw gives us a flexible toolset for recovering this lost sharpness. In this lesson, we'll also learn how to apply identical edits to multiple images. So let's get started here. I've got my Camera Raw dialog open. If you do not have your images open from the previous lesson, you can find them in the Chapter 8 folder, and I'd like us to scroll down and begin with the image titled Sharpening. Again, you can open this inside the Chapter 8 folder. Now we're going to apply some sharpening to this image, and we find our sharpening controls in the Detail tab. Now it's very important, much like with noise reduction, that you be at a 100% view in order to accurately view your editing effects when it comes to sharpening. So let's zoom in here. I'm going to hit Control plus repeatedly on Windows. That would be Command plus if you're on a Mac. And here for this image, let's just bring her face into view. Obviously for a portrait, you really want to be concentrating on the face and skin. It goes without saying, but I'll mention it. When you want to apply sharpening and judge its effects, you want to be viewing a part of the image that is already in sharp focus. Sharpening tools are essentially allowing us to apply localized contrast adjustments. We can't optically sharpen an image, so we're not using these tools to bring something out of focus into focus. We need to be starting with an area of the image that was already in focus at the time of image capture. We've got 4 sharpening sliders at our disposal here: amount, radius, detail, and masking. Now I'll go in depth into what each of these sliders do, but the easiest way to get a handle on what these sliders accomplish is to hold down the Alt key on Windows, the Option key on a Mac, as you click and drag the sliders. I'll do that here with the amount slider. I'm holding down the Alt key on Windows, Option key on a Mac, and if I click on the slider, you can see that the image turns into a grayscale preview. Now what this does is temporarily eliminate the color in order to better evaluate the sharpening effects here. This is optional, but if you're finding the color is distracting and getting in the way of you evaluating the image properly, simply hold down this Option key on Windows, Alt key on Mac. And the amount slider is our volume control. When the amount is set to 0, no matter what the other sliders are set to, sharpening is turned off. So let's activate sharpening here. I'm dragging to the right, and as you can see in this grayscale preview, or if I let go of the Alt key or Option key, you can see that we are sharpening the image. We're at a fairly high value here. Let's go even further so you can see what really happens if we go much too far. So you can see that we're actually adjusting localized contrast along edges here. So let's bring this back down to a more reasonable starting point. And let's talk about radius. Now what radius does is determine how far beyond a found edge the sharpening effect will apply. Now that's a bit abstract, but if we hold down the Option Alt key, it'll make much more sense. Holding down the Alt key on Windows, Option key on a Mac, if I bring radius down here to its minimum value, notice that the entire image goes gray. Now areas of the image in which you can actually see outlines and shapes are areas that are being sharpened. So if it's just a solid gray, that area will not be sharpened. Now pay attention around the eyes, eyelashes, and eyelids, and watch what happens to them as I drag radius to the right. Notice how more of the image is becoming visible, and you can see that around the edges here the effect is really spreading out so that the creases above the eyelids are much more prominent with a high radius than with a low radius. So radius is really going to control how far from the edge sharpening is going to apply. And again, what's an edge? An edge is simply an area where you have light pixels meeting dark pixels. So this area right above the eyelid would be considered an edge, whereas this area in the cheek is a more smooth area. There's not a big distinction between pixels in terms of lightness or darkness, so this would be considered a smooth area, while the darker pixels of the eyelashes when up against the lighter pixels of the skin would be considered an edge. We have a detail slider, and the detail slider is great because what that does is allow Camera Raw to prevent smooth areas from being sharpened. Let's drag this slider all the way to the left, and again I'm going to hold down the Alt key on Windows, Option key on a Mac, and again the entire image goes gray. Areas that are gray are not being sharpened. When the detail slider is all the way to the left at 0, it is applying maximum protection to smooth areas. Watch what happens along the cheeks as I drag the detail slider to the right. Now you're able to see texture inside the cheeks. Areas that were once smooth are now being unprotected. So sharpening is going to be applied there. So for a given combination of amount and radius, dragging detail all the way to the right will apply that to smooth areas of the skin, whereas dragging detail all the way to the left will protect those areas as much as possible. I'll show it here in our color view. This is with detail at 0. And this is with detail all the way at its maximum value. Now our last control here is really interesting because it allows us to have a mask which will hide or reveal the amount, radius, and detail settings. Again, I'll hold down the Alt key on Windows, Option key on a Mac, and at its default setting of 0, the entire image goes white. And a white mask means that amount, radius, and detail are being applied globally throughout the entire image. As I drag to the right, though, you see areas of black start to appear. Areas of solid black are blocking the effect of amount, radius, and detail, so no sharpening is applied to those areas. Areas where you see a gray partway between white and black are allowing amount, radius, and detail to show through partially. The darker the gray, the more the effect is being blocked. The lighter the gray, the more the effect is being allowed to show through. So if I drag masking all the way to the right, I can block out that sharpening effect over a vast majority of the image. I'll take this back here to 0, and let's take a look at some actual settings that would give us good sharpening results here. For amount, let's see, 27, 28 is actually not bad. I'll come down just a couple of points here to about 25. Now our radius is much too high because we're starting to see some artifacts in here, and we're getting some areas of skin that are being sharpened that we really would like to stay smooth. So radius, I'm going to bring that down just a couple of points, right about there. It's not looking too bad. And detail, let's see, if we turn detail all the way off, we have a pretty good result, but we would like to apply some more sharpening to areas in here just to get them a little crisper. So perhaps we'll pull detail up perhaps around 8. Looks pretty good. But we don't want the sharpening to apply too strongly to these smooth areas of skin, so we'll go to masking and bring that mask up here probably about there. Looks pretty good. So you can see that we've got nice sharpness here in the eyes and in the hair, but we're not introducing artifacts in these smooth areas of skin. I'm going to toggle the preview off and on simply by pressing the letter P. So here's where the image was with no sharpening at all, and you can see it appears a bit softer, and here's with our sharpening settings. Now with sharpening, I should point out, in addition to being at a 100% view, you should be looking for a very subtle sharpening effect at this stage. You're not looking for a huge night and day difference. That would mean the image is likely over-sharpened. So again, here's our preview with sharpening off and with sharpening on. So if you pay close attention to the area around the eyes, for example, you'll see a difference, but it's rather subtle. But it will make a huge difference in your image when all is said and done, and it's time to either output this to the web or print it. Now let's take a look at how we can synchronize edits among multiple images. Let's suppose we've spent a lot of time sharpening an image and we want to apply that change to a bunch of images of the same subject. That's very easy to do. Over here to the left, I want you to scroll down, and we've got 3 files here, Sync 01, 02, 03. Again, if those are not open right now, you can find them in the Chapter 8 folder. And I'm going to simply click to activate the Sync 01 image. And I'm going to make some fairly obvious changes here so you can see how we can sync them across multiple images. First thing I'm going to do is select the crop tool, and I'm going to crop this image. And let's go to our basic panel here. And what I want to do is warm the image up a bit, so I'll take the temperature slider and drag it over there a bit. I'm going to boost exposure just a touch, and let's bump up our blacks just a little bit. So you can see here that from Sync 01 to these other two files, we have obvious differences. The crop, the color temperature, the brightness has changed. I'll even boost up vibrance a little bit here. Now what happens if we want to apply these identical edits to these following two images? Well, all we have to do is shift click to select all three. Now we have three selected images, but Sync 01 is the active image, and we know it's the active image because we have this blue outline around it. And knowing which image is active is important because we have a synchronize button here, and if I press it, it's going to give me choices of the various parameters that I want to synchronize from our active image to our other selected images. And because Sync 01 is active, that means that any settings we check here will be pulled from Sync 01 and transferred to the Sync 02 and 03 files. Now here I've got everything selected, but we have a pull down menu where we could choose just to select the white balance, just exposure, or just items in the basic panel. And I'll choose that one because those were the changes that I made. They were all in the basic panel except for the cropping. So I can simply add cropping by clicking right in this box. Now if I press OK, watch what happens. The crop and all the basic panel changes are automatically applied to the following two images. So it's a very fast and quick and efficient way to synchronize changes from one image to multiple